Okay, so we're going to get started with this. So the United States Department of Agriculture promotes soil health principles. They didn't used to do this. This is a kind of a brand new thing in the last few years. There's an awesome scientist who worked for USDA, and he was over a portion of the United States, like 1/3 or maybe a half of the United States. His name is Ray Archuleta. You can look him up online and learn tons of stuff from him. He's a brilliant scientist about soil health, and he recognized as he was helping farmers across the United States that everything that he was telling them was wrong, because all of the things that they would do would it would actually hurt the soil. Somebody's not muted. Can everybody mute themselves real quick? Thank you. So Ray Archuleta is working with USDA, helping farmers to try to grow good crops, and everything that the USDA was trying to do. By the way, the USDA is the United States Department of Agriculture. So he was working with farmers across the country, and he was basically failing. Now, that's not me accusing him. That's from his own words. He says this in multiple speeches that you can find online. He just comes out and says it. He says, everything we did was wrong. We understood soil science. We knew how the soil worked. But when it came to applying it to agriculture, it didn't work right. We couldn't figure it out. We couldn't make it work. And so it was really frustrating for the people who were the most educated people, the doctors out there, the peoples with the master's degrees, the scientists who know the basics. They couldn't help the farmers to grow good enough crops to make money. And then there's this rebel named, he's not really a rebel, he was just doing things differently, but his name is Gabe Brown. I'm a fan of his, he's my friend, and he lives in North Dakota. He's near Bismarck, North Dakota. But he's up in North Dakota and he's doing his thing, and he's a young farmer with his wife years ago, and they're trying to grow a whole bunch of awesome crops, and they're just trying to raise their family on their farm. So I think it was either 2 or 3 years in a row, his crops were big and almost ready to harvest, and a hailstorm came and just wiped it out, and it pounded his crops into the ground and destroyed it. After that series of hail storms, he figured out, because he planted, the next year, and he had a really good crop. After that ground was rested, and the biomass from the crops that he grew, biomass just means the plants that you're growing. It's just the living plant tissues. Nothing was harvested and taken away, but the hail had plowed it into the ground, and he just left it there because there was nothing to do, nothing to harvest. And he didn't even know what was happening, but ecologically, he was growing a crop and then letting the microbes eat that crop. Now, he didn't do it on purpose. Mother Nature did it, or Heavenly Father did it, or what, however you want to explain that. But the crops were consumed by the microbes. His soil started to heal from a long time of like years, decades of farming, which can hurt soil. No, all farming certainly does not hurt soil, but a lot of farming techniques can and do hurt soil. And his particular farm had massive amounts of tillage done over the decades. And those 3 years of that crop he was growing being pounded into the ground by the hail began to restore soil function. So the next year he grows a crop and it did really well. And he thought, man, this is really great. And he started learning, and he didn't even realize how his soil had healed for years after that. But when he looks back, he can see how much better his crops did afterwards. So let's jump forward, I don't know, 10 years, 20 years. I'm not sure how long it was, but it was a long time. So we jump forward in time to Gabe Brown on his farm, and he's teaching a class. And this Ray Archuleta that I just told you about, who worked for the United States Department of Agriculture, came to his class. And he listened, and it's a big, like it's a full day class on their farm. They're walking around, they're looking at different fields, they're digging in the soil, they're looking at crops, they're talking about soil function and soil health. They're talking about how to create good food from farming without the harmful, potentially problematic chemicals that we use and fertilizers. No, not all chemicals and fertilizers are bad. In fact, water is a chemical. So, we can argue those points to the end of the earth, but we just so anyway, yeah, I won't go down that road tonight. But Ray Archuleta is at Gabe's farm, and he just sits there all day. And every time Gabe made a point, Ray Archuleta kind of was just like, oh man, he's like squinting his eyes, his hands on his chin. He's like, oh. And Gabe was worried, thinking, oh man, this guy from the government, he's thinking everything I'm saying is crazy. And he says, Gabe's just worrying about it, So the day is over, everybody's leaving, but this Ray Archuleta stays behind to talk to Gabe. And Gabe gets worried, and he's like, oh, I don't want to fight with this guy. Can't he just go home? He heard my presentation all day. And so he gets in a conversation with Ray Archuleta, and Gabe's, anyway, Gabe said something to the idea that maybe you didn't agree with what I was saying. And Ray said, no, I was reacting to all those points you made because it was fantastic. It's absolutely everything in my training, for decades of training with my doctoral degree and all of my science that I have done and all of the teaching I have done over the decades, it finally made sense when you were explaining the practical application of what was happening here on your farm. So they became really good friends, and they talked, I think, for another day or two at that time, if I remember the story right. And they really delved into the depth of the science of what is actually happening, and how Gabe Brown's farm had a functioning soil, which meant he had good crops without purchasing all of the high-priced fertilizers and without having any liability problems because he's using any type of chemicals that could be potentially harmful. So Ray Archuleta goes back to his office, his government job, working with most of the United States, at least a huge chunk of it. And he says, okay, we've got to change everything we're doing with the United States Department of Agriculture. What we're teaching farmers is making farmers go broke, because every time we come out with something for them to do that's supposed to fix it, it makes the problem worse. Soil compaction gets worse. The soil problems become worse with all the fertilizers. People need more fertilizer. They need more equipment. Everything we do creates a snowball effect, and another domino falls, so that so that the farmers have to spend more money. And the biggest problem with American farming is not the fact that we can't grow food. It's the fact that it's too expensive and farmers can't make money. Farmers do make money, but they have cash flow, but they struggle to make a profit. And I know a lot of farmers who really struggle to make a profit. So that's what Ray Archuleta saw, and he thought, this is great. This is going to be the greatest thing. So he went back, and amazingly, he did not lose his job. He did not get fired, and he started teaching everybody in the United States Department of Agriculture, and the entire United States got trained. Every county agent got trained in soil health. So he came up with 5 soil health principles. Now my slide here shows 6. Oh, I can't count. It shows 7. One of them I made up, and that's the first one. So I just made it up. So if you talk to a person in the, the government teaching this soil health stuff, they will never have heard of mindfulness. That's my own thing. They recently just added context. So if somebody has learned this 4 or 5 years ago or previously, then they will think there are 5. But they recently added the 6th one, and I added 7. So let's just go through these and talk about them a little bit. Before I get into that, though, before we get into this list, let me just tell you something. There are millions of American farmland acres, so millions of acres in America, that are using these principles now. And since they are using these principles, it means that the commodity grains that they are producing are healthier, because the food grown in healthy soil is healthier than food that is grown without the soil, without using these soil principles. And a lot of people have argued about that for a long time, but it's actually absolutely true, because there's a lot of researchers doing research, taking 2 pieces of food that look the same, but one was grown on really healthy functioning soil, and one was grown on just more traditional modern American farm land. And the people who have been, anyway, that food, the people raising the food have shown that their food is quite a bit more healthy. It passed the tests when they send it to the labs, which is pretty awesome. So I'm always making the joke that now our Twinkies that we buy are healthier than they used to be. It's actually true. I mean, I think that's just funny, but it's actually the truth, because, okay, fine, I don't know about a Twinkie, but just the normal run-of-the-mill food, it can certainly be much more healthy than it used to be. So that's pretty awesome. So I have great hope. 15, 20 years ago, when I started teaching gardening and farming stuff, I did not have a lot of hope for the future of a lot of things, but I certainly have a lot of hope nowadays, because it's going in the right direction. So let's go through these really quick, and then we'll get to our Q&A. If you guys have questions, we can talk about your gardens. But number 1 is mindfulness. And I put this one in here because I think this really needs to be in here. What I mean by mindfulness, it's the idea of laser focus. When we walk out in our farm, on our land, in our gardens, we need to look, and we have to be super, super observant. We have to be as observant as a warrior. We have to look at every little detail of the ecology around us. We have to know what's happening in our environment. And it's not that we need to have like an educated whatever about that. We just need to be able to observe, because we will learn as time goes on. It's not like we have to have all the answers right now. I told this recently to a group of people, and they said, well, yeah, but I don't know what I'm looking for. That's not the point of mindfulness. The point is, you go out there and you spend time in your garden will tell you what it needs, and you will start to learn what the ecological indicators are. So that's what mindfulness is. It's continued education. It's a commitment to be out there in your food producing place, whether it's a greenhouse or whatever, for about 15 minutes a day minimum, so that you can enjoy it, so that you can be a part of it, so that you can understand it and comprehend what's happening. So number 2 is context. Now, context is really important, because if I do something on my farm, it does not mean that it's right for your farm. The context for my land could be very different than yours, because of climate, because of what you want, because of what your goals are. There could be a lot of different reasons and things to do different and make different decisions from farm to farm. Even within the same climate, you may live in a city and you have 20 other people who are your super close friends, and you're all doing something differently, and that's totally fine and appropriate, as long as your context is correct. But your context is not, it's not defined by your climate alone. I mean, your goals and your purpose can really be a big part of that. One thing that is out of context in the West, I think a lot of people who get on this class on Thursday nights are in the Western states, and we love raised beds. Everybody wants a raised bed. They want to put a box around their raised bed. Well, that's the opposite thing to do. It's out of context for the Western arid United States, because usually we don't have enough water, and there's water restrictions. If you're living in cities, there's usually water restrictions in the summer, especially on drought years. You know, the last few years, maybe this year is another drought year, and your garden won't be doing as well if it's a raised bed. Raised beds became popular in the eastern United States where there's lots of rain, because sometimes the ground would not dry out enough to get a garden planted until the middle of summer on a wet spring. And so people discovered that if they built a raised bed, it would dry out enough, even when it was raining, that they could go out and garden. And so all the garden books talked about how great raised beds are, but very seldom did they really explain why it was so great. And then I've never seen a gardening book that says that raised beds are out of context for the Western United States, but I just think they are. The better thing for a desert area would be to have a sunken bed. So there's just where you'd like dig a hole in the ground. So imagine your raised bed, and then look at your and then, you know, just do that opposite, go down in the ground, make a sunken bed. That would be a lot better. Okay, we're gonna pause for 1 second. My son Ezekiel got on. I'm gonna try to make him a co-host. I don't know how to make him a co-host. I do it every week, but now what? Ah, there's a button that says make a co-host. Ha ha! Okay, we did it. Thank you, Ezekiel. Now you can run the show. Okay, let's go to number 3. So soil health principle number 3 is no-till. No, this is not absolutely no-till. There are times that tillage could be appropriate and good for certain situations, but tillage is massively overused. And it's overused so much that we have destroyed many of the mineralizing microbes in the soil. So after tilling for a decade or so, that now we have to have some kind of an input on the ground in the form of fertilizer is the normal way we do it. In the early days, people would use barnyard manure. They would use crop rotations. There were a lot of different things they would use because of too much tillage. Now, in the early days, meaning 100, 200 years ago, it was much harder to do a no-till system. But nowadays, it's very simple. It's very easy because our modern use of machines has made it it's been like it's fantastically easy nowadays to use a no-till method. And of course, I teach that in all my classes. I have multiple videos about that on my Patreon page. And we just put compost on the ground. We plant right in it. But it's one of the hardest things for people to understand how you actually do that, because it's a new way of gardening. It's a new way of growing food. But it is one of the best ways, and it's one of the easiest ways. And it's one of the cheapest ways. A lot of times I say, okay, you should have a garden. So people go out and they spend $500, $700 on all the stuff they think they need for a garden, when they, I don't know, maybe they could have spent $15 or $20 on seeds. If you already own a couple of hand tools, that's all you needed. You know, I mean, if you don't have a rake and a hoe and maybe a pitchfork, couple of other hand tools, It may cost you a little bit more to get started, but once you have those, take care of those tools, they'll last you for 100 years. So anyway, no-till is very fantastic, and it's very easy to do. Number 4, keep the ground covered. We've got to start thinking of the ground like the skin of the earth. You would never, ever take your arm and cut a square out of your arm, just the skin, and you'd skin it off and remove that. And then your arm is just exposed, all the tissues underneath your skin, the muscles and everything. We would never just go about our life with a great big hole the size of your cell phone off of your forearm. Nobody would do that, at least nobody in their right mind. But this is what we do all the time when we completely remove vegetation from the ground. So when we till the ground, it uncovers the ground. When we cut hay and we remove all the vegetation off the ground, it uncovers that ground. We've got to keep that covering on the ground. So what is the covering? And it's called the Detritus Sphere. We've already talked about that in other classes. But the Detritus Sphere is the dead organic matter that is on top of the ground that feeds the microbes. It also cools the ground from the hot sun, and it keeps the ground warm from super cold temperatures. And so it protects the ground. And why is it so important to protect the ground? Because of the microbes. If the microbes get too cold, they die. If they get too hot, they die. If they dry out quickly, they die. And if they're waterlogged and underwater, they die. But keeping the ground covered helps all of these things it helps to moderate all of those examples I just told you. So keeping the ground covered is really important. There's another way to keep the ground covered, and that's to keep it covered with living plants all of the time also. So living plants are good, and that detritus sphere is good. And so as much as possible within the boundaries of number 2, which is context, we want to keep that ground covered. All right. So what if you want to grow an acre of potatoes to feed your community? And you're going to go in there with a potato digger and dig them up. Well, that is some tillage for sure. And you are uncovering the ground a little bit when you do that, for sure. But within context of potato farming or carrot farming, you are going to expose your soil more than maybe if you're raising lettuce or some other crop where you're not disturbing the ground. So can you raise root vegetables and still have these principles intact? Yes, you can. Absolutely. You would just have to think it through. Maybe you would want to work with a person you could hire to figure out the methods to best work with this. I actually do that work. I was in Heber a few weeks ago working with a family. And so depending on your context of what you're trying to accomplish, you can absolutely incorporate all of these things into your system so that you can have an awesome functioning soil. So let's move on to diversity. What does diversity mean? During boot camp this last week, I took everybody into the greenhouse. They were in there for the first time looking around. Some of the people have been in there before for sure, but it's when we first went in there as a group for our boot camp class. And we were just kind of looking around. People started asking a few questions. Somebody asked a question and I answered it by saying, diversity, 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 diversity. Finally, I got their attention and everybody's looking at me like, what is wrong with this guy? But we have to remember diversity. So what does diversity mean? Diversity of life. Okay, diversity of life. So if it is alive and you see it in your garden, it's good. Now, what if it's an insect that's going to hurt something? It's still good. So like during boot camp, I also pointed out that I probably have 10,000 aphids in my garden, but nobody could really go and find a vegetable that was damaged by aphids. Yes, I have an aphid infestation in my garden. But as we picked lettuce and broccoli and other crops, we picked quite a few things. We couldn't find a plant with that were infected with aphids. I don't think we did pick one that night that had aphids on it. And before we left, I said, okay. And so I went to an area of the garden where I knew there were some older plants, and I went to the older leaves and I picked off some leaves that were down by the ground. And I found a couple of aphids to show people and said, yeah, see, aphids live here, but they're not causing a serious problem because my soil is almost healthy. I mean, it's a brand new greenhouse. It'll be 2 years in June when I moved here. So, I mean, and then it took me all summer to build the greenhouse. But the aphids are not attacking everything. They're not destroying everything because things are working, because I have high diversity. So I have a lot of plant families. We tried to count them during boot camp, but we weren't very scientific about it. But there's probably 20 plant families in my greenhouse with maybe 60 to 90 species in that greenhouse. That may be a high number, but there's a lot. And one reason there's a lot is I let a lot of weeds grow. But I do have a rule. I won't let the weeds go to seed, but I'll let them grow a while, because that's diversity and it helps a lot of things. Number 6, animal impact. What is animal impact and why is that important? When we look at ecology, so let's just walk outside, go to a forest, go to anywhere where plants are growing, and look at the ecology around you. You will find diversity and you will find animals there. And you've got to remember that we're talking about the animal kingdom. We're not talking about just dogs or cats or just horses and sheep or cattle and goats, or we're not talking about those kinds of animals. We're talking about the entire animal kingdom. So we're talking about, bacteria. Are they an animal? Well, I kind of lump them in this group. Okay. So the soil food web, which is the bacteria, fungus, protozoa, nematodes, microarthropods, enchytraeids, the earthworms, all of the macros that you don't need a microscope to see, like all the little creepy crawlies. When you dig down in the turf, in the lawn, you should see dozens and dozens. It's better if you see hundreds of different kinds of bugs, different species of bugs in the soil. The more life you have in the soil, the more diversity you have, and the less problems you are going to have. So with high diversity and high animal impact, you will have very low disease problems and you will have very low pest problems as you're dealing with growing food. So a lot of times people are telling me, oh, we have all kinds of bugs and the bugs wipe out the garden. Well, my first response to that is, do you have a good animal impact? How many animals are in your garden? How many good insects are in your garden? People don't know. People can never answer that. What they expect me to say is give them a name of a spray that they can put on the garden. If they're an organic gardener, then they want to know a natural thing that they can spray on the garden. And I don't know those answers, really. I mean, I know a couple of remedies, but I just don't live in that world, because I follow these principles, and I always have followed these principles, but I didn't know it until recent years when the USDA came out with this list, and I started studying it, and I was a skeptic at first until I really understood it. And I thought, wait a minute, this is the way people have done this for thousands of years. This isn't a new thing, which is, and all the scientists promoting this, they agree with that too, which is pretty awesome. So animal impact, it's good to have cattle in your, if you have a greenhouse, don't turn a herd of cattle in it. That's out of context, obviously. But if you have a 20-acre field where you're growing a big farm, you could probably graze some cattle there at certain times of the year, and it would be very beneficial. Okay, so number 7, the last one here, living root. What is the living root in the soil? What does that mean? Always have a living root. So a living plant has roots that come out. And if you were on our earlier class, like a few weeks ago, when we talked about the spheres in the soil, that is the rhizosphere. So the living root, so a plant will take it takes up water from the roots, and it takes in sunlight as it's just a power source, and the photon hits the leaf, and when the photon comes, it powers the photosynthesis, so that a piece of oxygen goes away, the carbon and the photosynthesis all happens, and it makes sugar. To make a long story short, the plant makes sugar, and we call that photosynthesis. What does it do with all that sugar? Well, the plant grows, and that's what we've always believed, is that, yeah, the plant grows really good. In recent years, we have been able to see with microscopes, and you don't even need a super powerful microscope. You just need to get the conditions just right. And we can see the root leaking fluid into the soil, and what they're leaking, we call those exudates, and it's just sugars that feed the microbes. So when you have a living root in the soil, it keeps that soil healthy. It keeps all those good little guys in the soil thriving. They're growing, they're doing their thing, they're they're multiplying. But when we have a crop, let's say we grew a crop of radishes. Let's say I'm a radish farmer and I have an order one time a year for Thanksgiving, because lots of radishes are sold in November because everybody's cooking and they want to make garnishes with radishes. And this is true, that's when the most radishes are sold. So let's say I'm a farmer and I have a contract with the Cisco truck. They're going to send 25 semis to my farm. And I make enough money on that one sale to live the entire year. So, excuse me. So I plow up the field and I keep the weeds out of it by plowing it once a month for about 11 months of the year, because it only takes 30 days to grow radishes. So in October, sometime in October, let's say October 15th, I go out there and I plant 100 acres of radishes. I hire 2,000 people to come in. They pick all the radishes and they bunch them up. They put them in boxes. The fleet of Cisco trucks show up. We load them up. So I had a living root in the soil for 30 days. And the rest of the year, so weeds don't grow, I'll just till it once a month. I'll just run over it with my disc so weeds never grow. That soil is dead because nothing can live that long without a root in the soil. So that was an extreme, unpractical way of managing a farm. Nobody does that unless they're crazy, but I just showed that crazy example because that would be the worst thing you could do for your soil. And that would destroy probably every one of these principles of soil health. So this is just tonight, this was just a, kind of an introduction to the principles of soil health and where these came from. They came from Ray Archuleta and a group of other really smart people. He was the pioneer to get this into the conversation of the United States Department of Agriculture, so that farmers everywhere are listening to this. And it was fun because this year, early this spring, when was it? It was, I think it was March, February or March, the Soil Health in the West conference. It was held in St. George, Utah. And it was for quite a few Western states were invited to come. And there were, I don't know, there were maybe 600, 700 farmers there, but they invited me to go speak. And it was super great. And I went and gave a presentation about soil health as far as vegetables go. So that was neat. I gave one speech, but I repeated it and gave it 3 times. And it's actually online. If you wanted to go look at it, you could look up that conference and it's on there. Let's go ahead and open this up for questions and answers. You can unmute yourself and ask me questions, or you can type in the chat box. Ezekiel's on here and he can help with this process to make sure I don't skip anybody's questions tonight. So feel free to just go ahead and ask me your gardening questions, and I'll do my best to answer them. Let me find my chat thing here. Okay, Becky here says, just found the land I would like to purchase, and the area has moles. I've never dealt with moles. Oh, let me try to. That wasn't the first question, and I lost it here. Just found the land I would like to purchase, and the area has moles. I've never dealt with moles. What suggestions do you have for gardening with moles? Would deeper raised beds with chicken wire or something like that lined on the bottom be helpful? Okay, this was Becky, right? Yeah, Becky. It's really hard to garden with rodents like this in your area. I would try to trap them. I would stick a garden hose, or if you have irrigation, stick it down their holes, try to drown them out. If you do fill it up, their holes up with water, then when they come out, you can like stand there and they'll come out of their holes sometimes. Then you can hit them over the head with a shovel. Sounds violent, but you know, you got to get rid of them. I have no idea about, like I said earlier, I don't know anything about like poisons that you can use because I don't live in that world, but there probably are some. But I wouldn't suggest it if it's in your area where you're gardening, because some of that stuff lingers on and it would be bad to poison yourself with your food. I doubt that would happen, but there's a possibility. The other thing, you're talking about wire under raised beds and so on. I would not do that because it's too much trouble. It's too much work and stuff gets in there anywhere. It's 5 acres of mole holes. Yeah. Are you in a city or are you in the country?
It's on top of a mountain, just it's very rural. It's not really in the city. They'd say it's within city limits, but it's not what I'd consider a city.
Well, yeah. So you have irrigation water or not?
Nope.
That's too bad, because flooding them out's the best way.
Yeah, we will have well water eventually here.
Okay, do you have a tractor?
Not yet.
All right. Because another thing that works is if you hook a pipe to like a tractor, you can even use your car, but tractors are a lot better. Cars are not made for this. But if you hook a hose to the exhaust pipe, you can stick that down in the hull and it'll help to smother them out. Some people swear by that, but you need an old-fashioned diesel tractor that has really black, nasty smoke because it's more poisonous to kill them. If you do that to your car, it will still work, but it's bad for cars to sit there and idle for hours. But you could just, run your tractor for a long time. They're made to just sit there and run, and it doesn't hurt them. So there's an idea. So 5 acres, so that's a big deal. The other thing you could, are you planning on plowing this up? Like, if you're going to plow it or till it, that could help.
We are hoping not to, but if we need to try to help get rid of them, then
yeah,
it's a possibility.
Yeah. Yeah, Charlotte here says that the gopher traps work great for moles. That's true. You can trap them. Do you know how to trap a mole with a gopher trap?
I think I've seen Paul Gauchi do it. Now that we're talking about this, I think I've seen him do it online.
Yeah. So yeah, go to just any farm store will have gopher traps. So where you see them digging, you can just dig the hole open so that the hole is open. So you dig it with a shovel, because a lot of times the entrances are kind of closed off. So dig down and then you stick that trap down in there. But it works. Yeah, I've trapped lots of moles, but irrigation water is the best way. Are you saying not to till it just because you're talking to me and I'm always screaming not to till?
I was actually on board with not tilling before I started taking this class. This is raw land and we're trying to keep it as pristine as we can.
Oh yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, I would certainly try trapping and flooding them with water. I don't know if that's gonna work though, where you don't have a good source of water right now. So yeah, it sounds like traps is gonna be your best way, and you can get rid of them. Do you have natural predators around?
Well, I don't know what their predators are. We've got cougars and raccoons and weasels, stuff like that.
Yeah, coyotes are a pretty good predator. If the problem with coyotes is when you have people like me, I like to shoot coyotes and then I have problems with squirrels and gophers and moles. But so the least amount of shooting you can do to the predators is awesome. Birds of prey are really good too. I would build some perches, just like tall perches. If you can get some 16 to 20 foot tall poles like lodgepole pines, and then just stand those up like on like fences or whatever, put 10 or 20 of those around your property, and then the birds can come in and land on those, and that will help you with your rodents a lot over time. Not just the moles, but mice and gophers and squirrels and all that kind of thing. Super good. So
Thank you.
oh yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, somebody else here said, I think, yeah, it's Charla talking about owls. Yeah, the owls, build a bunch of owl houses, build you some kestrel houses for those little miniature hawks. Bird houses are a good thing. You know, build them to specs that the birds of prey can live in them. Those are good. Very good to encourage that kind of diversity around your places.
I have a question that somebody sent me for you.
Okay, let's hear it.
So it says, I live in northwestern Colorado and wolves are being reintroduced and have been started to be reintroduced. I run a large sheep operation in the mountains. I'm curious as to your thoughts on how to run them in a way that I can keep them safe from wolves without the ability to shoot wolves as per new government mandates.
I have no idea. Good luck with that one. That's not what you wanted to hear. Here's the real problem with the wolves. I don't mind a wolf now and then, but here's what really frustrates me. I followed that legislation when it was happening. It was actually this last election. Not like it was the last, it was when there was the last presidential election, I think is the year that happened. And all of the rural counties in the state of Colorado voted against it. And the two big counties where there's cities, where there's Colorado Springs and then Denver, those are the two that voted for it. And since they had more population, it passed in the whole state. That is a broken economy. Obviously, I'm using the big definition of economy because it had nothing to do with money, but it probably had everything to do with money. But anyway, just the way people deal with each other. That's how I use economy. But the political system was broken there. If I have children standing in the early mornings and it's just getting light at a bus stop waiting for the school bus to come, and there's like 5 little 7, 8, and 9-year-olds standing at a bus stop, I don't want a pack of wolves in my backyard. And that's when people worry about that. And yet the city people who don't have that issue, because there's not wolves in cities, I mean, they may infiltrate the cities at some point. It's just too bad that our political system, when we vote on something, somebody else makes a decision that does not affect them. So that's too bad.
So that person just sent me a follow-up question asking if increasing the number of rams increasing the total number of rams would help. So
No,
that they
that'll-
have more.
No, that'll do nothing, because the psychology of a sheep is going to run from a predator. You need an animal that has a psychology where they stand up to predators. So you need something like llamas or donkeys. Those make really good animals, but I think the wolves would just eat them too. So you probably need something else that would fight the wolf, like Great Pyrenees dogs or Anatolian dogs. So, yeah.
They say thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so I'm going to the very top of this chat here. Brandon says, what do you think of hydroponic growing food? I like hydroponics. It needs to have these 5 principles, these 7 principles we talked about today, though. If you can have an aquaponics system, which means you're using fish, then you've in your water, then you've increased your diversity. If it's a sterile environment and you're just dumping in the chemical fertilizers, your Brix levels, which is your sugar and protein content, they're going to be pretty low. You're not going to have a lot of nutrition in that food. I mean, maybe you can, maybe there's systems that do, but when I was doing side-by-side comparisons a few years ago with aquaponic systems and then just plain hydroponic systems, the Brix levels were very different. So which was interesting. So, you know, I think it's a lot more healthy to grow food in a system where you have the diversity, you have the animal impact, you're more mimicking ecology. I think there can be some really great benefits of using the technologies of hydroponics and aquaponics and all that stuff, but I think it could be very overused also. I think a lot of our food systems, a lot of the autoimmune diseases we're seeing today are coming because we don't have the beneficial microbes in our own human bodies, in our digestive systems. And a lot of this is from the newfangled ways of growing food. We're growing it so clean that the food looks good, but the nutrition levels are low. And then when we consume the food, the wrong bacteria are on it, or there's no bacteria on it to help with the digestion of the food. So, you know, there's a lot of people in the industry who are doing a lot of really cool research right now on this, showing that this is that there's a lot of truth to the type of thing I'm saying right now, which is pretty awesome. There's a lot of masters and PhD students out there trying to set up tests to show if this is true or false, if it's just something fun to say, or if it's actually true. The problem is they haven't we're not far enough in. And I think in 10 to 20 years from now, we're going to have a lot more of the peer-reviewed articles that are showing this as being truth. But right now it's not being taught when new dietitians are going to school, they're not even talking about this hardly, which is sad. So that's what I think about hydroponic food. Okay. Ezekiel wants to be a co-host. Becky found land. We talked about that. 5 acres of moles. I'm just trying to make sure we did this. Yes, owl houses. Yeah, that's a fun film, The Biggest Little Farm. I've heard about that from like 75 people, and I've still never watched it. Isn't that hilarious that I have not watched that film? Anyway, talk about greenhouse watering. Yeah, so greenhouse watering, that's a big topic. You might want to get a little bit more specific about what you want me to talk about. But in my greenhouse, I have sprinklers and I have a drip system and I have a misting system. So when I'm trying to root plants, I like the mister to turn on like every 30 minutes for about 20-30 seconds. It's the same setup as you see happen in a grocery store when you're walking past the produce aisle and a mister comes on and you're trying to reach in there to grab something and all of a sudden it turns on and it's misting you with water. That's happened to most people who buy produce at a store. Well, so it's the same type of thing. Anytime you're taking cuttings from plants, that's how I love to water those guys, is to keep that mist going. And then they dry out, the water evaporates off the leaf, and then it gets wet again in like 30 minutes. And that really helps those roots to grow. I don't know why. I don't understand the science of why, but it works really good. So in a greenhouse, plants can often get dirty. They can often get like dusty and dirty because they never get washed off by the rain. So that's one reason that I like to have the sprinkler in the garden, in the greenhouse, is because it keeps things clean. So if the sprinkler comes on once a week, that's awesome. In the winter, I usually water, if it's really cold and dark, like cloudy days, cloudy weeks at a time with 1 or 2 sunny days. Sometimes I only water like once every 2 weeks, sometimes once every 3 weeks in the winter, because you don't want to get it too wet. On the other hand, sometimes in the summertime, I'm watering like four times a week, like 4 days a week. I like the drip system in the greenhouse because when you have plants that are flowering, like green beans especially, but other flowering plants, you get more food to pick because the pollination works better if you're not sprinkling. And so you just keep the ground soaked with the soaker hose or the drip irrigation, and that works better. So let me look at, I think, recommendations for using once a week water share irrigation on the garden. It really pools. What is best management for the water? Of course, it's a soil probe that it pools. What should I do about that? Okay. So you're talking about, who was this? Let me see. Oh, it's Quincy. Hi, Quincy. I'm so glad you're on here. Okay. So I do know, I was trying to figure out what you were saying, but I totally understand. Because you share the water, and so you get your water once a week from the community, and you have to take it at that time or you don't get it. Yeah, that's how old Mormon towns were set up in Utah all over the place. Now it's different in some places, but some places it's still the same. Just keep doing it the way you've been doing it. It's fine. If it's pooling somewhere, try to divert it somewhere where it's not pooling. So that's the yeah. The thing is, if it's pooling, don't water it as much. But if you think it's not getting enough water, if you water it less, then give it somewhere to go. I'm trying to think about your yard because I was just there a couple of weeks ago. And you probably don't have a place for it to go. If the water does pool in your garden, here's the problem. You have an infiltration problem. A lot of people say, oh, we have a flooding problem. It rains and my field floods or my garden floods. That's actually not the problem. You should be able to get a giant flood coming through your yard, and it all should go into the ground. If it does that, you have a functioning soil. If you say you have 100 acres and you get 10 inches of rain in 5 hours, which is a lot of rain in 5 hours, it's like flash flood material. But if you have an excellent garden soil, then what I mean by excellent is if it's a functioning soil, then it will soak up all of that rain and the water will go off. Let's say you get 30 inches of rain in 5 hours, which I don't even know if that's possible, but let's just say you did. When the soil does get saturated and the water does run off and cause a flood, the water will be clear. There will be no erosion. There will be no soil leaving the farm. If the soil is muddy, then you know that your soil is not functioning. And that's one of the indicators to know if it functions or not. If soil goes away, you have muddy water, then you have your microbes are not doing their job. So I don't think that helped. Did that actually help you? You're giving me a thumbs up there, so maybe it did, but I would just say to water it a little bit less if you're worried about the, you know, the pooling problem. And then just focus on the soil, the principles of soil health that we've talked about over time. Yeah. Yep, just make a trench and give the water somewhere to go so that it can go away. That's the right thing. Okay, Ezekiel, are there any of these that I have missed? I don't think I missed any in the chat.
Did we cover hawks being a danger to chickens?
No, I didn't see that one.
Okay. Are hawks a danger to chickens? Thinking of trying to manage those moles with chickens around.
Well, that's the deal. Get you a bunch of chickens and have them a little on the hungry side. Chickens will eat those moles. Who believes that? If you believe that, say aye.
I've seen them.
I don't know. Chickens are vicious. If you're going to have chickens, put a lot of chickens out there on that 5 acres. Get you way too many chickens.
How many are too many chickens?
I don't know. Can you get 5,000 chickens?
Probably not.
Can you get 1,000?
Well, if we need to, sure.
Do you have like 5 really good dogs, like rat terriers? You need
Okay.
small dogs that are super hyperactive.
We don't even have property yet, so we don't have.
Okay. Yeah.
We're at the very beginning here.
Okay. Yeah, but like cats. Do you love cats?
Yeah. Yes.
Get 10 good cats and go
Okay.
out there with them and like they can't be house cats. They can be
Right.
house cats, but they can't be fat house cats. You got to have
Okay.
cats that are a little bit on the hungry side, and you've got to train them to be, they can't think they're a person. They have to know they're a predator. You need to have a cat, and you can have it in the house while it's a kitten. You got to take it outside, and you got to you have to teach it like a mother cat would teach her chickens, her babies. You have a BB gun. I mean, shoot some birds, shoot some sparrows and feed those to the cats. Shoot some wild squirrels and trap a mole or two. Teach those cats to eat the moles when you're trapping them. But that's, yeah, I mean, your natural predators, your domesticated predators are going to be an excellent thing for this mole problem. So
Okay.
I'm
Well, that's
super,
encouraging.
yeah.
That's
Like
easier than 1,000 chickens.
1,000 chickens is kind of, that's a stretch, but it wouldn't be meat eating chickens. You wouldn't want to get 1,000, like whatever, a meat chicken. You want to get hens that are active. And so like white leghorn hens or brown leghorn hens, because they roam far. Your big fat chickens, we used to like those breeds that most of your brown egg laying breeds, they like to hang around the house and the barn and the barnyard, and they're there and they're social with people. Well, your white egg laying chickens, for the most part, those ones they're gonna like get out, they're gonna walk around, they're gonna go out and do things. They will.
What about a production red?
Yeah, they're a brown egg layer. They're kind of the same. They're kind of, they would have the same mentality as most of all your other brown egg layers,
Okay.
because that's what they are. That's where so their mentality is the same, even though they're
Okay.
a cross,
So are hawks going to leave them alone?
No, the hawks are gonna eat your chickens. That was the question. Yeah, hawks eat chickens. It's just the way it is. So you have to have, pens for them and all that stuff, but yeah.
So we need cats, sounds like.
Yeah, you do need
Cat.
some cats. You may have a vicious cat that'll start eating your chickens too, but that's just part of farming.
Okay.
You'll have to dispose of a cat now and then. The other thing
Okay.
is, let me think about this. Let me think about this predator cycle. You need some other things to help. let me think. Okay, so hawks are going to help the moles, but they're going to kill your chickens. You want chickens. You need animals that are going to help protect your chickens. So you probably need a good chicken dog. You need to find you a Great Pyrenees dog. Do you know what a Great Pyrenees is? They're the big white sheep dogs. A lot of times people will cross them with an Anatolian. They make good sheep dogs, whatever breed those are, you know, whether they're crossbreed or purebred, it doesn't matter. But get you a puppy and raise it with some chickens. But you need to raise it with young chickens because old chickens will peck at a puppy and it will scare the puppy and it will make the puppy hate them. So they have to grow up together. You want this dog to grow up thinking it's a chicken. And then you don't bring it in the house. You don't pet it very much. You pet it just enough that it knows that you feed it every day, but you don't cuddle it. The worst thing you can do to ruin a guard animal is to have kids love on puppies all day long, because then the puppy grows up thinking it's a human, and then dogs develop human attributes. We all kind of know that being around dogs. But you want the dog to develop chicken attributes. And so it grows up thinking it's a chicken. Remember that child's story about Lambert, the sheepish lion? And he grew up thinking he was a sheep until a wolf came to eat a sheep and suddenly he turned into a lion. This is the mentality. This is the psychology we are trying to create in a guard animal. So if you need a pet, get a different one. Your guard animals are not your pets. Or they cease to be guard animals because they're going to come and sleep on your front porch all night. And then that's when skunks and coyotes and raccoons and all the other predators go and eat your chickens.
Okay.
But guard animals are wonderful. We have a bunch of chickens here. There's like, I don't know, 50 good laying hens here. And they live in a horse trailer. And that way we can lock the horse trailer and then just hook up to the horse trailer and move it to a different part of the farm. And then open the door and then they have a new place. And the white dog, he owns the whole ranch here and he just walks around, but every night he goes and he sleeps by those chickens.
Aww.
But we don't have problems with hawks eating the chickens because there's a big white dog there. And if anything gets close, he's barking and charging around. And so those guard animals, they're very, very good, but it takes work in the beginning to train them. But anyway, yeah, there you go. I just taught you everything I know. We can end this meeting right now.
There's a statement that I think leads into a good question here.
Yeah,
Charlotte says hawks killed our chickens until we put turkeys in with them. And I think based on some of the other conversation we've had tonight, apart from your traditional guard animals, which would be dogs, what else do you recommend putting in with chickens, sheep, etc.? You've mentioned llamas, you've mentioned donkeys. Charlotte mentions turkeys. What other good symbiotic relationships do you think are worth mentioning? Okay,
one of the best guard animals are geese. Geese are wonderful. They live for a long time. They're loud and obnoxious. When a stranger or a strange animal comes to your farm, a goose will alarm. Yeah, geese will alarm you much quicker than a dog. A dog will be asleep, you know. A criminal, a thief, they come up sneaking up to your house. They can walk right over a good guard dog half the time. But a goose, nobody gets past a goose. Geese are some of the very best guard animals there are. They're vicious. They don't run away from predators too much. If we're talking about a pack of wolves, they'll just eat the goose. But as far as like hawks go, they'd probably be pretty good against hawks. So, yeah, I can't think of any others. What we've talked about tonight is probably the whole list now that we've included geese. Okay, any more questions?
Someone just sent me an interesting one. They say, on the topic of strange or unusual animals to be putting together, what do you think of raising exotic herbivores for meat or ecology purposes, such as hippopotamuses or African antelopes of some kind. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Nope, that's a brand new thought for me. I do know a ranch in Texas. It's a pretty big ranch, like in the thousands of acres. And they were struggling to make money with cattle, so they sold all their cattle and they bought a bunch of exotic, different types of ungulates, which are like cloven hooved things. I don't even know the African animals that well, but like different types of antelopes and gazelles and kudus. I don't know, but they got a bunch of breeding pairs and they just let them go out there, and then they bring hunters in, and the hunters are how they make their money. So they charge hunters to hunt them. That's all I know. You know, as far as stopping desertification, any grazing animal will do that if managed properly. It has nothing to do with the species. It has everything to do with proper management. So, yeah.
Here's a question. I have around 600 acres of land that I manage between stuff I own and things that I rent from the BLM in mountainous parts of Utah. It's very difficult to have conventional animals up there. Do you think there's a way that I could be managing native elk or deer herds to better ecology?
No, probably not. Not without getting in trouble with the law. The state owns the deer. I don't know how that works, but they think they do. So they certainly manage them. So I don't think there's anything you could actually do to deal with the elk or the deer. Because, you know, for ecological purposes, what you want to do is you want to have a large herd of animals in a very small space for a very short amount of time. And then the way you know if it's working is by watching the plants. And when the plants react, meaning they grow at a certain rate, you know if you're desertifying or if you're building more soil and more plants. So I have no concept how you would do that with native animals unless you owned said animals and the government wasn't there to cause you problems in that management. So that's my answer, which was not helpful. Sorry.
Here's one from Leslie. Cats in garden area has always been off-putting to me. Is it actually harmful?
I agree with that. I don't like cats in a garden area because they're walking around on your food, and then they'll dig their little holes and they'll go to the bathroom in the middle of your garden. I don't like that because I don't like those habits that cats have. Although once in a while, I do grab the 2 cats we have and I will stick them in my greenhouse when we have a rodent problem. So no, cats really don't cause too huge of a problem. I don't know that they really hurt anything in a garden. But yeah, I totally understand your off-putting. I'm with you there.
So I'm trying to figure out how you do the mole problem with it.
Yeah, wanted a bunch of cats. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I would certainly use cats to help get that mole problem under control and then find a good home for some cats when the moles are gone. I mean, if you have 5 acres, if your mole problem was like under control, meaning that there are still moles in the world around your 5 acres, but
Yeah.
you don't have hundreds of them, then like 2 good cats are going to keep that population down once
that's
you get
encouraging.
your problem under control. So, you know, go down to the local rental store and rent about 300 cats for about 5 weeks, and then take the cats back, and then just keep 2 cats that you like, and you won't see any damages from 2 cats on 5 acres.
Great.
So I don't know
Thank
what a real solution is, but I mean, the concept is a good idea. Maybe
Yeah.
it's kids. I don't know. How many teenage kids are in your group of people that are working together? I mean, you know,
5.
5 kids. Okay, do they have friends?
Well, 5 teenagers.
5 teenagers. Well, usually kids under 12 are better at this because they're more willing to do it than teenagers.
Oh, then there's 12 altogether, and so 7 younger than a teenager.
Okay, perfect. So you got 12 kids, and then you're going to need 3 or 4 adults to be there and watch the fun and make sure nobody gets hurt. And then all of the kids need to bring 2 friends. So now you've got like 36 people or whatever, and give them all a shovel, and you go across that 5 acres. Now remember, there's like 36 people.
Yeah.
So that's 36 shovels. Go across there, and every 6 feet or everywhere that you see a mole damage, start digging that up with shovels, dig it up. And when you start seeing the moles, hit them over the head with the shovel. If that seems uncivilized, it probably is, but you need to control your moles.
Right.
And you need 8 or 10 small breed, very active, vicious dogs that the kids love on, like rat terriers or whatever. You don't want a big old slobbery dog that's just looking up into your eyes when a mouse or the mole is running between their legs.
Right.
Bigger breeds are miserable because they don't know what they're doing. You got to have a little active dog that'll just go chasing and digging. So you've got 36 people, 36 shovels. There needs to be a couple of moms with picnic baskets and some treats to feed people, so that because you're going to be out there for 4 or 5 hours, and you're going to keep morale high because chocolate chip cookies and lemonade's coming out every 20 minutes. And it's going to be this big fun mole killing party, and about 6 or 7 dogs that are charging around, because when a mole comes out and he's getting away and somebody's screaming, you've got to go after him. I'm not kidding about this.
I'm trying to picture it working.
It's going to work. You've got to think. This is the Georgic tradition, alive and well. These are the things we have to bring back into our society. If we don't bring stuff like this back, we will lose our American freedoms.
See, Parker would head this up. He would totally head that up.
Okay, what we need, if there's any finicky people, finicky is the wrong word, and I'm not putting anybody down, because we want to train our kids to be like, what are the right word? There's like 2 or 3 really good descriptors. We want them to be like what is a high class person? What is the opposite of uncouth? Help me out here.
Cultured, refined.
Yes, thank you. We want our children to be cultured. We want them to be refined. We want them to be respectful. We want them to have manners at the dinner table. We want them to be educated. We want them to be able to dine with the kings and of the earth, okay? If the prophet came to your house, or a general authority, or the whoever, if they come to your house, we want to be able to take good care of these people in a good way. We don't want it to be a bunch of, forgive me, but we don't want to be fools, okay? If that was a bad swear word, I'm sorry. And that's not what I'm promoting. But you've got 5 acres infested with moles. Take care of it.
Okay.
And do it in a good way. Think about the teaching experiences you can have. I mean, go back and read some of the Georgic classics. Go back and read Little Britches. Read Old Yeller. Read, Charlotte's Web. A lot of those were like children's books. Those are the greatest Georgic classics there were, because they teach us the principles so perfectly. We can't let a rodent destroy our food production.
Yeah, and there's a lot of holes on that property, but it's beautiful other than that.
Okay, perfect.
Hey, thank you.
You bet. Okay. Any more questions? Maybe that's it. Maybe we're done. Are we done?
I have one more.
Okay, Zeke.
So Okay, so this question is from somebody that wants. He says that the biggest problem in getting started with farming today is getting land. Do you have any recommendations beyond getting yourself adopted by someone with land for a young person to go and get a few acres to get started?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, that is more okay. So what is said there, that's true. There is absolute 100% truth in that statement. But I'm going to argue that that statement is used as an excuse more than the reality, because I have seen thousands and thousands and thousands of acres that are not being used that somebody wishes somebody would use. And the people who need the land and want the land and desire the land, they simply have a mental block. They think it can't be done. There's a young man named Daniel Jenkins. He came to my farm in Oregon, where I was working for, like, this was what, 10, 12, 14, I don't know how many years ago this was, but he came up there. He learned from me, stayed with us for almost a year. I taught him hopefully everything I know, because that's what I try to do when people come to my place. And then he went home, he served a mission for his church. And then he, after that, he went home and he said, I want to be a farmer. That was an incredible experience that I had before my mission. I want to be a farmer. He didn't have any land. And so what did he do? He found a piece of land in the middle of the city in Roy, Utah. I think it was across the freeway in Ogden. And he started a farm, and he rented a piece of land that was not being used. He put up 4 or 5 greenhouses. I don't know how many he had, but he had a bunch of greenhouses. And he started raising vegetables, and he got some other farmers on board. There were 4 or 5 people growing food. They had, I don't know, 50 to 100 customers, somewhere in that range. And he was growing all this stuff, and it wasn't making enough money. So he had some other odd jobs, and in the winter he'd work other jobs. Well, now he lost that piece of land because the owner sold it. And he's like, okay, so I don't know what to do. And me and him, we talked about it a few months ago. And he went to the city, and I don't know which city it was. I don't know if it was like Ogden or Roy. It was one of those, or right around there though. And he went to the city and he said, you guys have lots of land and we import most of our food. I can grow food. Let me grow food and start teaching other people how to grow food. And the city people, the mayor and other people, they went for it, and they're like, oh yeah, that sounds pretty good. It sounds like you know what you're talking about. And so now he's setting up gardens on county property or city property or somewhere, I don't know what it is. And he's doing an educational program with people who want to learn gardening, and he is growing food to feed people in the city. So if a person actually wants to be a farmer, go be a farmer. Don't say, oh man, I can't get land because I'm not a bazillionaire and land costs zillions of dollars. I hear that all the time. And I'm really sorry to put that down at all, because it is kind of a reality, except that as people are sitting back saying, I can't do it, there's other people out there proving them wrong by doing it. It can be done. You have to want it bad enough. And then you go figure it out. So that's my answer. And it was kind of the way I said that was probably somewhat rude, and I really apologize for that, because I don't want to come across as rude. That one kind of frustrates me though. So I'm sorry that rudeness kind of came out. I do apologize honestly. But the whole idea is a little bit frustrating to me, and it's something I've been trying to turn around, because I mean, I'll give you another example. There's an FFA teacher. If you don't know what FFA is, it's the Agricultural Club of High Schools all across America. It stands for Future Farmers of America. It's a great leadership club, and they have agricultural projects, and there's all these things that they can do in high schools. A lot of high schools in the United States don't even have FFA anymore, but there was one in northern Utah. I don't know if he was it was somewhere in the Salt Lake Valley, but I was talking to that guy, and he said, There's absolutely no opportunities in agriculture for these kids. This is just a leadership program. It's like an extracurricular high school leadership program. It's all it is, because there's no way any of these kids growing up in the city are ever going to be able to do anything at all in agriculture. The only thing they're going to do is they're going to go to Utah State. They're going to graduate with their agricultural degree, whether it's an agronomist or a horticulturist or whatever, and then they're going to go to work for a big corporation. And that is a lie. That is an absolute lie. There are thousands and thousands. There are countless opportunities in agriculture today. I mean, I don't know how to pull this up. I wonder, I don't know. I don't know how to share that screen. I wonder if I'm smart enough to run my computer here. I was not
currently see your screen, just so you know. Here
we go. Oh, this is the wrong one. This is a good one though. Let me move something. Can you guys see this? This food risk tracker?
I can.
Okay, so take a screenshot of this, the Solari report or whatever. I don't know how you do this on your devices.
Would you copy and paste the URL into the chat?
Really? Is that what I do?
Yeah.
Oh, well, that didn't work. Let me do this again. This is not what I was going to show you, but it's along the same lines. This is somebody. Okay, there's copy. Now I have to find the chat. Oh, hey, here it is. Sorry, I'm so silly. Type message here. You guys can laugh at me. It's totally appropriate. The farmer who can't turn on a computer. Enter. There. Now you guys can click on this link. So this is just somebody, this Catherine somebody who did this. This is pretty recent. And these are just all the stories that are happening right now about food problems, food crises in the world in the last year or two. If we had more farmers, these articles would not be written. The reason we have a food shortage and high priced food and inflation about food is there's not enough producers. And there's other things too. Other people would argue and say, no, that's not true. But I will argue, because I have years and years of information on why what I just said is true. I'm not going to go into those details, but there are absolutely all kinds of opportunities for people in agriculture. But see, after World War II, society started telling their kids, don't become farmers. That's the real problem that started the food risks right now. We told our kids to be doctors and lawyers and get prestigious jobs and blah, blah, blah. And we need those people. But, and you know, we also need people who are producing a lot of other things. One of my heroes in agriculture was Ezra Taft Benson. He was the Secretary of Agriculture for a while. I love his writings on agriculture. And he told young people later on, when he was the president of the LDS Church, he said something else. He said, not everybody should have the big degree. He says, we all need to go as far as we can in our educations, but we need lots of people in the arts. We need people who know how to build things. We need mechanics who can fix things. We need plumbers who can do all that kind of work. And not a lot of people have gone into those things as professions. A lot of people do that stuff because they don't do something else until they kind of get stuck with it. And then their quality isn't that good because they're not living their life mission. So that's kind of frustrating, but we don't have enough producers. We don't have enough commodity food producers. We don't have enough local vegetable producers. We don't have, and you know, and the best farmland is being covered by pavement. But yeah, man, I'm getting off tonight. I'm going crazy. This is fun. Oh dear. I don't even know what our question was. I was going to show you a different thing. The other thing was an article showing, anyway, whatever. I don't even want to go into it. The point is
The original question.
there's millions of opportunities in food. Every human eats, and 200 people spend enough money on food every month to keep a full-time farmer in business. It doesn't make sense that our food is created by corporatism. It should be created by tons of local people, because our food would be so much better. The quality would be better, the nutrition would be better, everything would be better. It's still awesome to import bananas and oranges and other things from other places. There's nothing wrong with that. But why do we import lettuce? Most of the lettuce consumed in the United States comes from the fields of California. That makes no sense that New York eats, most of their lettuce comes from California. That makes no sense. You can grow awesome lettuce in New York. Anyway, I'm quiet. Ezekiel, take over. I'm getting out of hand.
So the original question, just to cover it, was, what's your suggestion to young farmers to get a hold of some land to get started? A follow-up question to that was, what are your thoughts on landless farming methods, such as mobile farming in a trailer or certified kitchens to get some money doing secondhand things to get started and stuff like that?
Man, all those value-added things to get started is great. Man, if you can buy, 10 bushels of tomatoes from a farmer, and then you turn that into salsa and you sell that at a good price, which is going to be like you're going to mark it up 400, 500, 600%. You'll make a good profit on that. Those are good things. I love that. Yeah. Anything you can do that's value added to get started in farming is awesome. Especially, like, don't go into debt to do it. Do it without going into debt. Start out small. Find 20 customers, make your product and sell it to them. Take your profits, buy some more stuff, and then get 40 customers and then sell it to them. Start out small. Don't go get a big loan, because interest never sleeps. And if you have a little bit of a failure and you're using your own money, the interest doesn't kill you. Debt is the worst thing to start out with these small ventures, because you're going to have learning curves in those small ventures.
We do have a question. Do you have a link for the conference video where you spoke?
No, let me see if I can find it. Let me go to Google. Let me type in Soil Health in the West conference. Beginners workshop. Let's just go to their main webpage here. I'm going to click on workshops 2022, February 15th through 17th. That's the one. I just clicked on workshops here. So Jimmy Emmons was there. I've been following him for a lot of years. He's super smart. Jill Clapperton was there. She's brilliant. There's my picture. I don't see. And then here's all these other people. There's Jared. He was speaking. This is the wrong one. Contact soil resources. Let's go to resources. Somewhere hidden in all of this are the recordings from last year. Let me just give me another second here to try to find it. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. So I don't see the link to my talk, and I don't want to spend time digging through it. So I am going to put the link to the website here, and you guys are probably going to find it a lot faster than me. So that's the link to where I spoke. But anyway, the recordings are on this website. Somebody said they couldn't find it. Did you find this website though? Because it's on this website. I do know that. Right there. What about that? It says previous workshop. Watch now. Ha! Ha ha ha! Here they are. So there's Jimmy's and Jill's. See, there's mine right there. There's my picture with my artichokes. I like artichokes. You ought to see the artichokes in my greenhouse right now. Some of them are getting as huge as the big giant ones you get from California. So I'm excited about that. Okay, I'm putting this in here right now. So there's the chat. And I'm going to paste this in there. There you go. Okay, there it is. So that's the link to the page where the videos are. Watch all those videos. Listen to Jimmy and Jill. They were brilliant. Their keynote speeches were awesome. I was speaking 3 times, so I only went to like 2 other classes. And so I can't tell you about all those because I haven't gone back and watched them. Some of them, I had friends though. I had 6 or 7 friends that went to this, and we all kind of ganged up and went to different ones. And there were a couple of speakers that a couple of my friends were not very impressed with. So it'd be interesting to see what they said. Like a lot of these guys are still using Roundup and a lot of other chemicals as tools on the ranch, which might be useful, but I've gotten past all of that junk. So, all right, Zeke, where are we at? What should we do? Should we call it a night? Or does anybody have a very important question we have not talked about?
I haven't been direct messaged any. Does anyone else want to throw in the main chat?
Okay, it's getting late.
I wasn't able to find the link in the chat.
Really?
Didn't see.
Dad, you sent it to me in a direct message. Let me.
Did I?
Sorry.
Ezekiel.
And then Becky had one more a mole question. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, there it is. Ezekiel just put that in there. So sorry, I'm not the best at running computers, but there it is.
Let me read Becky's question.
Okay,
not to beat a dead horse about the chicken/mole/hawk predator thing, but my question is, do all those great suggestions to protect the chickens who will eat the moles work on bigger predators like eagles?
You know, we have a lot of eagles around here in Nevada. And I'm going to go back and tell you what I told you at the beginning of this class. So listen closely. Diversity, 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 diversity. Get lots of diversity out there. You want a diversity of wild animals, and you need a huge diversity of just all kinds of life. You know, you want the eagles there. Eagles normally are going to be eating their native foods, which are not human foods.
Can I turn this on or not?
So that's where we're at. Okay, did that answer your question about the eagles? It probably wasn't a very good answer, but it is the real answer. It's the true answer.
It was a good answer.
Okay. I mean, a big old guard dog there barking around your chickens, it's going to keep the eagles away. So, yeah. All right, guys, thanks for being on tonight. Share this stuff with your friends and family. if people have gardening questions and they're trying to build gardens, tell them about this free class on Thursday nights. And good night. I'm going to go ahead and close this down. See you next week.
Thanks, William.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you. Okay, here we go. I'm shutting it off. Good night, everyone.